back to Kivumbi 2017. It's now just about 23 minutes after 8 local time, and we're still looking and analyzing on what happened and possibly the announcement by IEBC and whether they're on time. But now, after the IEBC announced the winner of the presidential election, there was spurts of violence that broke out in different parts of the city, and some of those were in Kosovo and also in other areas of the city. Let's listen in and watch. All right, so that's some of the violence that broke out in different parts of the city and also in Kisumu. And let me start with you, Mr. Peter Wanyama, on was this expected? And I mean, looking at the votes that Uhuru had and those of Raila, we can say that the country is almost divided in the middle.
Yeah, and unfortunately, based on our political realities and circumstances, we are somehow divided in the middle to the point where when we go for elections, we really invest so much to the point where we even invest ourselves, our emotions and everything in the electoral process. It is absolutely critical to mention that in our system, it is really a democratic process. Unfortunately, the winner takes it all. Mentality is the one which is dominant. And we tend to forget one very fundamental issue, that even the opposition is really a very, very important part of the democratic process. It is the opposition that keeps the government to account. It is the opposition that undertakes that oversight to ensure that there is no runaway corruption or maladministration in government. So really, in any democratic process, I think Kenyans need to understand that there will always be a winner who will then be in charge of managing the resources and running this country, and the loser who has constitutional responsibility to then oversight, to be the watchdog of that particular winner. So this idea of viewing the elections in that winner takes it all mentality is really what is creating a lot of tensions. We need to really change that mentality. And on that question of violence, let me just explain something here. That everybody has a right to picket. You have a right to go to the street to demonstrate. However, that right must be exercised in a peaceful manner. The Constitution,
without infringing on the rights of others.
Yeah, it is a constitutional right that you enjoy as a Kenyan, the right to vent your frustrations and to picket. However, you cannot exercise that right by going to the streets to burn tires, because then by doing that, you interfere with the rights of others, their movement from one place to another one. And we hear in some places the destruction of property. Again, so you really then go into an arena where then the police must be involved, because it is the responsibility of the police then to protect life and property. So I think insofar as we ask the police to exercise restraint, because really the police have been blamed for using live bullets against such demonstrators. We must ask the police to exercise restraint. However, the people must be told that attending the street, lighting bonfires, and then destroying the property of others is a clear invitation for the police to come after you.
All right.
And that's why I like what you said just before we went for the break, that the president last night in his victory, he was, he was gracious. He said he extends his hand to...
He reached out to
He
Raila.
reached out to those who had competed against him. And this is it. I think the president is maybe also getting very good advice, because if Raila Amolo had 6.7 million votes, those are very many votes. That means he has very many followers. And Uhuru had 8-point-something million. So simply these two are not very far apart. Both of them have very many supporters. And as my brother puts it, the problem with most of us is that we've not gone what Raila always says, asiyekubali kushindwa sio mshindani. There comes a time again when we lose, we have to accept that we have lost. And what I come to discover from most of the time from most of us Kenyans is that, or even from the opposition or the losers, when you lose, we need to get organized on how we are going to demonstrate. After Clinton lost, her supporters came out. They were even joined by some Trump supporters who now thought that they had made a mistake in voting in Trump. And they went on the streets. But look at how they went on the streets. The next day, they went on the streets with placards saying, "We don't want Trump." They were walking around the streets. They were singing songs. They did not light bonfires. They did not go on the stoning vehicles.
And spoiling property.
And spoiling property. So it is your right to picket. The only problem is that our people have never been taught how to picket. How do you go out there? How do you go out and demonstrate? I think a day like today would have been a very good one if the opposition was very organized to call on their supporters and tell them, you guys, we were not treated right. Things were not right.
And unfortunately, on that point, that's how they usually interpret mass action. That mass action to us, when the opposition called for mass action today, then mass action means going out in mass and really fighting, throwing stones and fight. Mass action is supposed to be a peaceful,
very peaceful
demonstration where you meet collectively and then you wave placards, you vent your frustrations in a peaceful manner.
That is a strategy.
And it should not interfere with the lives of others. Those who want to continue with their businesses should be able to continue.
Yes,
Absolutely.
you see, like the clip you have just watched, you can imagine in those apartments or those places, there are children. There are small people, young people who maybe were doing their homework. Maybe they're just watching their TV. Now you start screaming and throwing stones and lighting that bonfire.
And
what
tear
happens?
gas.
And tear gas now comes in and those scream. So you discover you are messing up with everybody in that area simply because your candidate lost. I tend to think Kenyans have never learned really what it means to have a mass action or to have a demonstration. And we can copy from other countries, from the West, from other nations. As our democracy grows, I tend to think also our activities should also mature with us.
Absolutely. All right. And now, addressing the gathering at Bomas of Kenya, the president reached out to the opposition leader, Raila Amolo Odinga. And addressing the gathering at Bomas of Kenya, he reached out to Raila and basically asked for there to be peace. Let's listen in.
Who are worthy competitors, we are not enemies. We are all citizens of one republic. As with any competition, there shall always be winners and there shall be losers, but we all belong to one great nation called Kenya. And I extend a hand of friendship, I extend a hand of cooperation, I extend a hand of partnership, knowing fully well that this country needs all of us pulling together in order for us to succeed. And Kenyans want us to succeed. So mine, like I said to my worthy competitor, especially the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, I reach out to you, I reach out to all your supporters, I reach out to all who are elected on now the opposition benches. We shall work together. We shall partner together. We shall grow together. We shall develop this country together. And we are there, ready to engage, to dialogue, to discourse together, so that we can build this nation of ours together. Twashukuru Mungu, and to my fellow Kenyans, as we have always stated, elections come and go. Kenya is here to stay. And as I have said severally in all our campaign rallies, let us always remember that we are brothers and sisters.
All right, so that's what the president had to say yesterday. Your thoughts on his speech? Let me start with you, Mr. Wanyama.
Being a lawyer, I look at everything from a constitutional perspective. If you look at the preamble of our constitution, it talks about the fact that we Kenyans, in summary, we need to have a prosperous nation based on peace, love, and unity. And of course, there are other aspects such as social justice, human rights, and democracy. Article 10 of the constitution really talks about inclusivity as a national value and principle of governance. So I interpret the words of Uhuru really as offering that pedestal for Raila Odinga. It's an important initiative to me, but we need to see action. So what should Uhuru do to ensure that he brings the supporters of Raila or Raila himself on the table insofar as bringing them together is concerned? So in my view, the two of them should come out. They should have a joint meeting, maybe even have tea together. We need to see them working together so that on the ground there, the emotions are somehow cooled. But more importantly, even though I believe that anyone who loses the position, a position to a sitting government, anyone who loses a position should really go to the opposition and check that government, exercise that oversight which is required by the Constitution. I believe that because if you have everybody in government, then you will have runaway corruption, no questions will be asked, and then you will be letting out down the people of Kenya. So what I believe is that perhaps we can tinker with that a little bit. Uhuru has discretionary powers to appoint, to nominate anyone for appointment as cabinet secretary and other positions in government. He can use his leverage also to ensure that certain positions in parliament, such as Speaker of the Senate, Speaker of the National Assembly, perhaps given to certain communities which are deemed not to be within the Jubilee camp. And of course, bringing on board cabinet members who really were not in Jubilee, as it were, for purposes of
having that unity coming together.
So that he can do within his powers. He has the constitutional powers to do that. So I think for now, what is supposed to happen is that important statement, which some people have been talking about, political dialogue.
Political dialogue.
Yeah, I like it. I like the way President Uhuru comes out there and says, my worthy opponents. Those words are carefully selected. Words like Right Honorable Amolo Odinga. You know, those are words that show that he's under very good advice. And listen now, the mood changes. The campaign words that could be used those days, or what were vitendawili, now those kind of words are now gone. We are not talking words like your neighbor, talking about words like worthy opponents, words like honorable, my brother. You see, now, and that's what Kenyans need to learn. As we do the war, when Chelsea and Arsenal are in the field, we can use all those other names. But once the game is over, you'll always discover they'll greet one another, the players will hug, and the teams will go down the tunnel as friends. They even go and use the same shower. So Kenyans, I think that's where we need to now to head.
But now the issue might come in because politics is about perception and it's about relationships.
Yeah.
The issue might come in, yes, those are very good words, well framed, but is there political goodwill to ensure that now there's an all-inclusive kind of way for moving forward?
Yes, and that is where the problem came with our new constitution. It locked out. Our constitution was such that once you lose as president and your running mate, you are almost out of government for the next 5 years. And that I think where it has made this thing look so difficult to bear. Because to imagine that Raila Amolo Odinga is not going to be in parliament, he's not going to be part of the cabinet, he's not going to be part of he will not appear in the Senate, That is painful to his supporters. And I tend to think that is where our constitution just seemed to put us in a very precarious position. And yet it's the same politicians who came up with those wordings in the constitution. So you can imagine, Hon Raila Odinga, Hon former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, these guys are actually out. Even Isaac Ruto, the strong man in Bomet, he's out. We're not going to see him anywhere. So in that one alone becomes very painful. The former constitution was such that even if Mwai Kibaki will lose as president, he still comes into parliament as the member of parliament for Odaya. And because of that, we'll still be seeing him. He still remains a leader. But can you imagine a situation whereby with 6 million votes, you are nowhere. You're completely out of the equation. And that is what makes it very painful for the supporters. And as we get into the new dispensation, Kenyans need to rethink this constitution. Is it very okay? Are we spending so much money? Are we locking out some of our best brains? Did we go wrong somewhere? These are hard questions that we must now start thinking about, that this is the second time now we are going through this, the dispensation of this new constitution.
All right. Do you see Raila Odinga possibly accepting the olive branch, given that there's been so much spoken about? Then he feels, according to what statements have been giving as NASA, disenfranchised.
I think both Raila and Uhuru are statesmen. They are people who are really very senior in this society. So what we expect from them is a show of humility. Is really putting Kenya faster. So if Uhuru has reached out to Raila, we want to see that perhaps in deeds. We want to see what that means in reality. In reality. What is he going to do to ensure that he fulfills that reaching out statement? Is he going to appoint persons from Raila's camp to the cabinet? Is he going to give them favorable recommendations here and there and all that? So it's absolutely important that we see what that means. And also from the Raila camp, it is important to emphasize that he participated in a democratic process where he was expected to win or lose.
Okay. Yes. Amunga, let's look at the strategies. Because now here we are, and Jubilee has garnered 8 million, NASA 6 million. Yes. What did Jubilee do right, and where could possibly NASA have gone wrong?
The most important thing here is this. The two parties competed well. That's why the president says worthy opponents. Worthy means...
And the numbers do tell us it's a worthy opponent.
Yes, the numbers are speaking. The numbers are saying that the two teams worked very well. It's like a game of, say, Arsenal and Manchester, whereby the two teams have played a great game, and one of them has emerged.
It's just a scoring power.
The scoring power. But now, and that is where you come into the word strategy. Because how is your defense? I've looked at several articles in today's news, and one of the writers, one renowned writer, is writing about the fact that Jubilee, the type of strategies that Jubilee used. And let me start with looking at how NASA, the things that I thought NASA will take advantage of and win. First of all, when they talked about adapter polling station, to me that was a grand idea. I thought, okay, let's see how they'll execute it. Let me see how they will pull it out. And you know, Matiang'i came in as the new CS for security, and he just issued a few statements, and these guys seemed to chicken out immediately. I didn't see them follow it up. I didn't see them give the strategy. Even the law came up and said, you can be allowed to be around the station 400 meters. The truth of the matter is, even the day of the polling, I even looked at the leaders of NASA. The moment they voted, all of them got into their cars and their choppers, and they left the polling station and came back to Nairobi. In fact, Bomas of Kenya became their a polling station. Yet Bomas was a place of only receiving and tallying. I expected them to see them on the ground. Let me say this. I even happened to go to look at some of the Form 34As and Bs. 34B. Do you know that so many of them were not signed by NASA agents? It looked to me like NASA did not have agents in so many areas. Yet they had come up with a very good strategy called Adopt a Polling Station. Let me come up with another strategy I thought they'll use. they talked about, at one moment or another, you had them talk about unga. And I thought, okay, these guys have gotten it now.
It became a political...
Yes, because I thought they'll use this as...
a campaign agenda.
Yes, unga revolution and whatever. So to me, this was a strategy now. Now, my work was to look at it as a strategist. I looked at it and said, let me see how far they'll go with this. Again, reached a place, the government countered it. Immediately, maize came. Okay, whether they came from Mexico or came from Tanzania or Uganda or from Pakistan, that's not the problem. But unga came, and it was in the shops. And before long, at one time, they said, oh, this unga is still expensive, what. But again, we discovered it reached the 90 bob. And it was everywhere. Actually, as I speak to you right now, unga has been on the shelves. So that strategy, again, failed. Now, the next strategy that NASA also had, as Jubilee tried to unite itself, bring all the other, collapse all the other political parties and become one entity. NASA said, you guys, you remain with your house, remain with your party, but we are NASA. Now, NASA was not a party. NASA was just a covering. So ODM be there, ANC be there. I come from Kakamega County and Western Province for that matter. And it did NASA bad in Western Kenya. And because at one point you'll discover there is an ANC candidate who alleges his allegiance to say Hon Musalia Mudavadi. There is also an ODM candidate. For example, look at Kakamega County. You see there is Oparanya. Oparanya is a very big person in terms of politics in this country. Then you pit him against your own brother called Boni Halwale. These are two heavyweights in politics of this country. And all of them are in the same thing called NASA. You can imagine the fight.
But opposing each other on the
opposing
ground.
each other in the same home. Two heavyweights fighting. Actually, when two bulls fight, Boni Halwale is aware. One of the bulls, the grass and...
The grass is the one that will
and
suffer.
the grass this time was NASA.
Let me also hear a little bit from Wanyama. I can hear you can go on and on about that. Wanyama.
Yeah, for me, I can mention that at some point, it reached some point where we really thought that NASA has cornered Jubilee. And speaking from a legal perspective, that they really went to court and got numerous decisions in their favor. And that was a perfectly executed legal strategy. But now when it comes to the implementation of the benefits of that jurisprudence, because they went to court and said, we want the judge to declare a conceptually satisfying environment, that neutral environment, interpret the law, tell us what IBC is supposed to do to ensure that there is a free and fair elections. And they got the decision from the Court of Appeal. Specifically that one on whether the county returning officer... Absolutely. That was a very, very instrumental decision insofar as the legal environment, that environment for the conduct of elections is concerned. So what they should have done, because I suspect they after getting the judgment, they did invest very much in terms of infrastructure to ensure that then the constituency becomes the focal point of really all activities. So it is absolutely inexcusable. It's actually inexcusable for information to come out that NASA didn't have an agent in one or two constituencies in this country. Because then it means they didn't focus on the benefits which they had gotten from the courts, and that to me is a really poorly executed strategy, because you can get the decision in your favor. However, you must go and implement it. And it looks like Jubilee actually benefited
from the decisions
from the court cases that NASA went to court. Yeah.
Generally, I've just read from a guy, though, he writes about even social media. He says that even Jubilee invested also very heavily on social media. As much as the NASA, what we were calling NASA rights, they will use social media. But to them, social media was about insults, you know. It was negative. It was negative. These guys are bad. These guys are what? These guys are all the names they can think of. But Jubilee will come up with, they'll promote their SGR. They'll put it everywhere. You know, and even look at the adverts on television and everything. Looking at how Jubilee was now organizing those adverts of theirs, and look at vis-a-vis the adverts from NASA, you discover that these ones had adverts that seemed to appeal to their electorate. And then the other thing that I came to discover very strong about Jubilee now was they looked at their strongholds. And then they discovered these are our strongholds. They maintained them. Now they went to make inroads in their opponents' regions. So you discover Jubilee gets 4 seats in Kakamega County, 4 in Bungoma County. Bungoma County is where Honorable Wetangula, a whole principle of NASA is. Can you imagine Bungoma County gave this president, the current president-elect, over 100,000 votes? in the very backyard of a NASA principle. Now, go even to the coast. Go even to Kambani land. You discover that even as much as we thought Wavinya Ndeti will give a run for the money,
For
Jubilee,
Mutua.
yes, Mutua, a Jubilee affiliate party, drowns her like nothing. You go to Maasai land. But the shocker was in Nyamira and Kisii. Everybody believed Nyamira and Kisii were now strongholds of
NASA strongholds.
Yeah. But go there, even a candidate from ODM winning became a problem because of sibling rivalry between ANC, between ODM and Wiper. And so at the end of the day, the strategy of NASA collapsed. And I have no regrets to say this, it collapsed completely. And the strategy of Jubilee, which at first appeared weak, when they were collapsing these parties, everybody said, oh,
there was a lot of
work.
criticism.
Yeah, it would
It
work.
was taking us to that monolithic kind
Yes,
of government.
but it came out to become the whole big idea. It came out to be the one that has given Uhuru Kenyatta the presidency. And let me say this, my dear friends. I think that's where we are heading as Kenya. We are heading to what you see in the US of Republicans and Democrats, two major parties with very organized structures, with very organized machinery to work it out. And I tend to think that's positive for Kenya. The only thing we have not yet matured in as Kenyan politics is when you lose, what happens? And when
and how just to accept defeat.
And how to accept
and
defeat.
say that
that is the only part we are yet to reach. But all other things, according to this election, how it has gone, surely that was powerful.
Wanyama, your closing comments, very briefly.
I think Kenya is a very beautiful country. It's a country which is bigger than any of the candidates. It's a country which is governed by the rule of law. And we have an independent judiciary. So in my view, is that we need to build institutions in Kenya. Let's not destroy institutions. If there's a dispute which has arisen from the electoral process, I think the easiest way and the most really critical way insofar as building our democracy is concerned is go to the Supreme Court.
Gentlemen, we'll have to wind up right there. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Peter Wanyama, and who is a lawyer and also a political analyst, and Peter Amunga, who is a political strategist. Thank you for joining us this morning. Well, Kivumbi 2017 is not over. It continues in just a few minutes, but I'm going to be handing over the reins to Michelle Ngele, who's going to host you in just a few minutes. But from me, I wish you a fantastic weekend. Do keep yourself safe. God bless.
KTN News, your official election station.